Hello and welcome to this latest installment of Tones of the Hammer. If you've not joined here before, this is a podcast where we talk about all things music and creative industries in Hamilton and the surrounding areas. And today I'm with a local studio owner who, if you've heard a record that's come out of Hamilton in the last few years, there's a big chance it's probably been recorded by him or he's had his hands on it at some point. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Michael Keire.
Thank you.
How's it going, sir?
It's good. I'm good.
Good. Well, thanks for coming down, Michael. Mm-hmm. This is kind of the second time we've met, right?
Yeah, the first time, Corktown.
Yeah, very briefly. But I was dying to get you on as a fellow like studio owner and audio engineer and stuff. Yeah. So, for anybody that doesn't know anything about yourself, your music, or your studio, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Michael Keire. I'm the owner of Threshold Recording Studio in lovely Hamilton. And I've been making records for a while now, since I was a teenager, and I love it.
Nice.
My favorite thing to do, man.
Yeah, well, I hear nothing but good things, coming out of Threshold, man.
That.
Yeah, I know recently you recorded The Wild High, right?
Yep. Yeah, a couple things, and just finished mixing another single.
Yeah, I loved it when I heard it. The guys, they were rehearsing here, and I heard that song on repeat at least like 4 times when they came here. So I was so stoked to hear it, man, and it sounded so great. And we'll get onto a little bit more, about what's going off now. Mm-hmm. I'm more interested to hear about what was your come up? How did you get into recording and all the way to Threshold?
I mean, I think for me, getting into recording was I don't know exactly what triggered it per se. Oddly, my uncle, very few people actually know this, but oddly my uncle made records in the city for years. I didn't know him very well. He was somewhat estranged from my family, but his name was Ray Dallin.
Right.
And he was a guitar player in the city and also ran a studio. Mm-hmm. And he passed away, maybe 15 years ago. But I just remember kind of walking into a music store and checking everything out, and it was the recording gear.
Yeah,
caught me. I've drummed for years, and I play a little guitar, a little bit of bass, and I can play piano somewhat. But the recording stuff just drew me in. Everything about it. I don't know why that was. It's not that I don't have ideas or songs myself. I'm actually working on some stuff right now that I hope to release in the early new year. Yeah.
Is that as a solo artist or like? Oh, nice.
Yeah, I don't totally know the name of it yet, but I've been lucky to be surrounded with so many great players and friends over the years. So totally. I got speaking of Wild High and the sort of monster truck camp, but Theo is playing drums and John played bass. And Marco from Dead Tired played guitar. I've known him since we were teenagers, and Adam Bentley is doing some singing on the song. Luke from the Dirty Nil played some guitar.
Oh, great. I can't wait to hear this.
Hutch and Connor are playing some horns, and my buddy Tom played some keyboards, and my buddy Dwayne played some sort of more abstract synth stuff. So that was sort of me trying to make some music using the skills that I think maybe I have best. I'm not even sure how to describe them, but I'd written the song, and Adam had worked on some vocals, and I wanted to develop it. But at this point, I don't play a lot.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't like playing, but I don't like hearing me play
at
this point. It's just kind of gotten to a point where I work with so many people that are talented that my expectations or what satisfies me is pretty high.
Yeah.
And so for me to get to that level, I'd have to woodshed for a year or two. Yeah. And really
you've got
focus
so
on
many talented buddies and stuff, that's the thing, right?
Yeah, so I'd rather call them in, and I also want to see the songs. It's I as much as it's sort of centered around me, I don't really want it to be about me.
Yeah.
I'd rather see what other people can bring to the idea that I have and allow it to kind of grow that way. So that's kind of exciting, and I think that kind of represents, maybe that sort of is a great indicator of what my involvement in music has been since the beginning, where it's yeah, sure, I like playing drums and I enjoyed playing shows a little bit, and even jamming bass, but at the end of the day, capturing sounds and documenting them, and then manipulating them and sort of trying to communicate the whole emotional experience or the story and how to convey that. Being a part of that translation is something I've been drawn to since I was a kid. And so walking into a music store and sort of seeing like an old Tascam, I think it was a 488, and just getting a handful of like Sures. I was making demos in my mom's basement, you know, and I think at a certain point, like I was sort of joining bands so that they would become guinea pigs.
Yeah. Good idea.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
I
was like I was excited about being in the band, but everybody else was more excited about, you know, what they were communicating or maybe the shows and the social aspect of it. But
the producing and audio side was like what you were into.
That's what I was about. Yeah. I'm a social person, but I also just sort of, really enjoy, I think it relates to like, I kind of like I grew up skateboarding.
Yeah.
And I think that is just sort of that way of interacting with the world is something that that the way that happens in skateboarding is very similar to the way that I see it with making records. It's a trial and error thing, and as much as you're competing against other people, you're ultimately shadow boxing against yourself. You're challenging yourself to do it your way as best you can, and every once in a while you pop your head up and you oh, fuck, that guy did something cool.
Yeah, because you're still learning all the time, right?
You're learning from them, and then you're learning from yourself. And so however, that part of the process and that aspect of the process, I think, is what I've been attracted to for the most part. And so I did that for a bunch of years and kind of, you know, I made some terrible but great recordings that are kind of cool for whatever what they are. And I went to McMaster, and I have a degree from there. But when I was at Mac, I kind of formally transitioned into taking music more seriously and following it for a career, because I realized at McMaster that I was doing well in philosophy and cultural studies. And when I kind of weighed the options, all of them were very like up and down whether you were going to get paid well.
Yeah, exactly.
But I knew I was going to have a great time making records.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Anybody trying to find the pot of gold in the music industry, right?
Well, you're already gone.
Yeah, exactly.
You're already off the mark because you're not going to get it if that's the way you go about it.
Yeah.
Because I think you have to be pretty relentless and just be in it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And so that's when I finished Mac, and then I kind of dove into doing the music thing full time around that time. And I've done many things in audio over the years, but now I'm back fully doing like just records. Again.
Yeah. And how did Threshold come about then? How did Threshold start? And
well, I had a studio that's now known as Boxcar.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, the Mule Spinner was right beside my first studio with Glenn. So I started at Catherine North.
Yeah.
Under Dan Aiken.
Yeah.
And then who, you know, rest in peace, was a mentor to me and a very good friend for many years. And I miss Dan. And at that time I had met Glenn, and we got along quite well. And then, but Dan and Glenn weren't getting along so well.
Right.
And so I teamed up with Glenn, and we went off and we started what then was called Vibe Wrangler. And then we opened up Boxcar, and which again was called Vibe Wrangler at the time. And it lasted for 4 years or so. And then it was just time to kind of go our separate ways. And I started Threshold. And one of the reasons I started Threshold the way that I did was, you know, Vibe Wrangler Boxcar was a very big space. You know,
yeah,
it's like
they're looking for
4 or 5 times the size of this. Like it's very big, huge ceilings. And the overhead on it was more, and just giant space. And I wanted to simplify things, like, and just kind of like whatever I was drawn to was telling me that I wanted to be able to understand sound and shape sounds. And number one, a way that was like going to allow me to have an overhead that would let me like weather the storms.
Yeah.
The ebbs and flows of things.
Part of it, right? Yeah.
So if I was going to be making money, then I'd actually be making money. And if I wasn't making money, then it wouldn't be so difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
So I became a little more business savvy.
Gotcha.
After round one.
Yeah, because it's I imagine there's so many learning curves. God, I can't imagine diving into doing that side of things. Of owning a studio, like you said.
In retrospect, as you put it that way, it was quite reckless. But yes, I dove into it.
Yeah, I think in a way there's a lot of people maybe from the outside of the studio, maybe artists or whatever, probably see it as you're doing music 90% of the time, right? But I think in any capacity when you're involved with the studio, it's probably like 30% music making and the rest is the business, maintenance, whatever it is, right? You'll know yourself for sure.
We were talking about that today.
Yeah.
Trevor, who works at the studio with me, we're rewiring things and going, dissecting the process and dissecting the signal flows, because I'd realized at a certain point, I mean, this is only for the real heads, but a lot of things were normal and half normal.
Yeah.
And I came to realize that was kind of sucking tone out of the signal flow. And so I've undone that and it sounds better, but now I'm sort of like, okay, well, I got to rewire that. And
gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a rabbit hole, right?
I mean, if you're not willing to be sort of the forever student, this isn't for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I saw him on an interview when I was just having a look on the internet about it yourself, and exactly, I think you said something exactly along those lines of, if you're not willing to put the hard work into it, then this is just, it's not the game for you at all, right? No. I think you've got to give 20 times more than you end up getting out of it a lot of the time.
I think
right?
so. And I think you have to enjoy doing that, because I think that we have this expectation that we're supposed to hit certain milestones in life, and then life gets easier. And that's sort of the way that I think a lot of things are presented to us. Yeah.
And like what the idea of success is in this industry.
All
and stuff,
those
right?
things. And I call them sort of civilians, that's the way civilians talk, and they make sense of the world. And I think that when you're in music, or if you're doing anything that's like creative and freelance, particularly if you're trying to do something that's actually creative and artistic, the forefathers of hip hop didn't make any money. But it sure is making money now. They loved what
they were doing.
They loved what they were doing. They just did it because they were drawn to it. And it made sense to them on a very intuitive level, and everybody else can sort of craft it after the fact to turn it into something that makes money. But I feel like, just some of us are cut from the cloth that where we, or gravitate towards that. And if we're not doing it, from my experience, it kind of like hurts my soul a bit.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not doing it, I don't feel right.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a real personal passion, right? Is music. I think it's exactly how you say, like civilians. It's hard to translate what it means to you when you're so deep into this is what I'm doing as a career in life, right?
It's very hard to communicate that with, just like a conversation or something.
Yeah.
And how challenging it is, but the challenge is something that you have to be quite comfortable with, and because it doesn't necessarily get easier, it changes, and we're in like a whole new wave of things with technology and stuff on the horizon, seeing where it takes it. I'm not overly worried about it, but I mean, like, it's keeping us all on our toes.
Yeah, that's it, right? Yeah. And the magic comes from, the people doing the art a lot of the time. I know there's a whole side of commercial music and everything and that, but it's like, I think what people really strive for is relatable artists and relatable, music creators, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't want to harp on the AI. Sorry. My mic technique is the best.
Yeah, no worries. You get comfortable. That's what I know.
Comfortable. Yeah. What I was going to say was, my buddy Joel was talking about it. He was saying something to the effect of, like, I think his take on AI and whatnot, and I think it kind of resonates with what you're saying, is, he was like, yeah, AI is going to threaten the pop music songsmiths.
Mm-hmm.
The people, like, I saw a great interview where somebody, I think it was like one of the Oasis guys was saying it, and he was saying, like, nobody fucking liked Jimi Hendrix at first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is so true.
Like all, the people that are really connecting with people and really serving art and like, trailblazing. if AI can figure out where those trends are going to go, I'd be surprised. I think the relationship with it is going to be something that we don't quite understand, but I think it will be a relationship because I think it's going to inform us, and whether it's going to give us what we want or not, or whether we feel like inclined to go certain ways or whatever. Sure. I think that's why a lot of, larger Spotify investors and whatnot are trying to make sure that AI is very good at creating, pandering to whatever content is out there. So because AI is going to do a fantastic job of coming up with 100 variations of song, whatever, larger ebbs and flows of where humans and art go. I mean,
it's hard to predict, right? Who knows what's around the corner?
And I also say, like Liam, I think it was Liam said, like, also nobody fucking likes what the next wave is.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, like Elvis wasn't a popular.
Yeah, that's the thing, right?
But when rap started, it was a joke.
Yeah.
When, when Jimi Hendrix was out there, nobody wanted that.
Yeah.
So like popular culture shits all over Trailblazers at first, and then 10 years later, it's what everybody's doing.
Yeah.
And so, I think we're still going to be relying on the tenacity of people that are just sort of driven to do new things more so than anything.
The magic of creators is definitely what makes it for me, for sure.
100%.
Yeah. So in terms back to a little bit about Threshold and you yourself, where do you take your musical influences, your production influences, engineering influences yourself? What's your
I mean, it varies a lot. I think I'll get inspired by different things at different times for different reasons, and sometimes it's the combinations of things, or sometimes it's the way that it I think it's where it comes from, because it's not necessarily that I like things dirtier or grittier or slick. Like I like a lot of very slick productions. You should see, like, probably in my top 10 played things in the studio is like Sorry by Justin Bieber.
Yeah, gotcha.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah, that's it, right?
They did a great job.
Yeah.
I think everything about that song kind of hits right, and there's lots of even sort of like new country things where I'm like, okay, they did a great job with it. And then there's a large part of me that still thinks, like, So What You Want by the Beastie Boys is one of the most badass sounding songs of all time. So like I think there's a lot of things. Like, I mean, I go through different waves, and I think, like, I've enjoyed different things for different reasons. Like, lately I've kind of been on a bit of a TV on the radio wave again, because I've just been enjoying, like, hearing indie rock. That style of indie rock kind of fell off, and I was kind of like curious about it again. They're touring again, and I was like, oh yeah, I should revisit it. And I think it's brilliant hearing all that electronic stuff fused with all the organic elements is like really
there's a lot of fusion going off between this at the minute, right?
And so I'm kind of like enjoying that, and I'm enjoying a lot of the like the post-hardcore sort of like rebirth or whatever. Like Fugazi's still one of my favorite bands of all time, but like right now I've been listening to like a lot of Tori Amos and a lot of Gojira.
Nice.
So does it make any sense?
No. And it doesn't have to. That's the beauty of it, right?
Like I've listened to Under the Pink and that second last Gojira record like 1,000 times on the train in the last little bit, and I think they're both just really well done. And there might be like certain things about like the Gojira record. I like the fact that it sounds as slick as it does, but it definitely sounds like human beings playing modern metal, which isn't all that normal. But like I feel so much stuff is so quantized and sample replaced that it can hit me in a way that just makes me bored.
Yeah, that's it. It sucks the life out of it, right? Everything on the grid and kind of, I feel
if it gets too manicured, my brain already knows what it's going to do, so I lose interest real fast.
Exactly. That's kind of what I love about this essence of some pop music at the minute is what I find. I always will tell everybody I'm obsessed with Dua Lipa's production. I think it's just so like clean and tight, but at the same time, it doesn't sound like your typical dance electronic music to, you know, everything totally to the grid. You know, you can kind of hear like
shout out to Drew Jureka,
yeah,
who did all the strings on it and stuff.
Yeah, and I've been like looking into a lot of like Jack Antonoff stuff as well, you know, Taylor Swift and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, that kind of it's that whole idea of analog stuff, analog sound kind of coming back in and blending in with that, you know, modern sound.
I was kind of head fucked when I actually listened to Harry Styles.
Yeah.
Because I had just sort of seen him.
Yeah.
And I was like, looks great.
Yeah,
cool
that's
as
it.
fuck.
Yeah.
Cool. Like handsome W.
Yeah, that's it.
You know? And then I heard it and I was like, this is like indie rock meets Aha.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy, right?
Like,
yeah.
what? That's the thing.
Yeah.
And I was happy to hear it. You know, I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's just so many, I don't know, music's like in certain ways music's in a shitty place, and in other ways it's probably in the best place ever. So isn't that the way it always is?
Yeah, that's exactly such a good way to put it. That's exactly how I feel. Like you say, it's maybe it's the business side of it in a way that's kind
probably
of
the grossest thing,
that's probably like ruining it for everybody. But yeah, I was thinking this the other day. Like I say, pop music to me is it's never sounded as good as it does. I just love the sound of it.
I would actually say that you're probably right. This is probably one of the best times. But you know, then again, which I have done, I've like, you know, revisited like some of the 90s hits.
Yeah.
On my Apple Music, like I went through a thing and I'm like, man, like that was a great time for music.
Yeah,
you know?
Like,
maybe not. I although I can't really remember any of the pop stuff, but I mean, I guess Pearl Jam and Nirvana, they were popular, right?
Yeah,
like, and maybe dance and electronic music hadn't really like hit its stride.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
It was the birth into that sort of stuff, like you say, and as well, kind of that crossover into the digital age, I guess, with recording, right? You know, you've got that, you know, you've got that kind of molding, blending of like going from all analog tape machines to digital recordings and stuff, you know. So it sounds changing all the time,
But I think you're right, man. I think it's a cool time for music, and I actually I'm starting to. I feel that like maybe there's a cultural sort of identity, or there's an expression or something's being dialed in, because I've seen a couple things lately with some performers that blew me away. There was that one guy, what's his name? Steven something. He did the cover of Stand By Me.
Oh yeah, Stephen. Oh, what's his last name now? It's gonna kill me. We played a song of his a few months ago. Stephen.
Something Junior.
That's it. There's a double barrel name sort of thing, right?
And like I watched that, you know, I was floored. I was like, this is one of the best covers I've heard. Like I think this is,
and that's what I mean. It's like the greats are out there, but they're just not put straight in front of us like it used to be, right? You know, it's like the way that I guess everybody absorbs music now. There's just so much music out there. And sadly, there's so much great music that just goes under the radar.
I think so too, and I think that might be one of the things that people are complaining about with music right now is that it's not that great music isn't being made; it's just that the market is completely oversaturated, and the pop part of it is like, you know, there's a lot of like Spotify playlists that are just getting jam packed full of like kind of crap, but it doesn't mean that there's not like great stuff there. But there's a lot of stuff that's just kind of like manufactured. But then you have guys like this, and I'm watching that and I'm like you're unbelievable, man. Your chops are unbelievable, your voice is unbelievable, and he's doing something different. And you know, he calls himself, I think this is brilliant, he calls himself Death Cab for Country.
I love that,
right? Because he's saying, like, he says he's combining emo and grunge and throwing it into a country thing, and he's doing an awesome job. And when I hear it, particularly the grunge thing, it's like, I hear that with Steve Earle tunes, and I hear that, you know, with Neil Young, if he was a little more country, like he was sort of country grunge in his own right, I think, with some stuff. And when I hear this guy doing it, even with an acoustic guitar, I'm like, and a classical acoustic, and he fucking like rips it. It's very punk in a way, and yet it's a cover of Stand By Me. And that kind of, you know, genre bending innovation that sounds like it's coming from a really earnest place with him, I fuck with it, because I'm like, I don't know. I think you're just it's killer. And so I watched that, and I got no criticism. I'm like, music's in a good place. You know, the kids are all right. Like,
that's it, right?
Like they're saving the day. As they
exactly.
Always do.
Yeah, and there's all these little scenes and stuff that I guess I don't know if they're even scenes anymore, kind of trends really, not like they used to be. But which leads me on to, because I'm dying to ask you again, because I know we was just talking before we started rolling. I want to talk more about like your experience with Hamilton and the scene and how it's changed. I know you're talking about one of our previous guests, the very talented Lee Reed, of course, was on a few weeks
I align
ago.
with his cynicism. And
it was an interesting, it's an interesting conversation to have with Lee, and I think it made some really great points about how tough it is to get gigs going and stuff.
Well, the city changed a lot, and I think like in the 90s, like so people, if they didn't see it, Lee was just sort of saying how wonderful things were in the 90s in Hamilton for musicians, because it was a great time where you could work a part-time job and work as a musician and live a very good quality of life.
Yeah.
And I echo that sentiment. I think that time period, and even like the early 2000s, like it was a fantastic time where, it was totally feasible to have a very, very high standard of living as a professional musician in a country as small. Like, I mean, Canada's a very big country, but its market size is very small. So, we're this, like when people think they made it in Canada, it's like you made it in California. You didn't make it in a big place. You're still kind of a little guy. And that's, I think with that said though, being in Hamilton at that time period, it was like, no, you could have a really, really good standard of living. The working class aspect of the city really shined in a way where you could see so many happy people, kind of like, or fulfilled people doing their thing. And
which is what I think is, like I say, it's the magic of Hamilton. It's that kind of working city, and that's it kind of combines with like that creative scene that goes on. That music scene and art scene that Hamilton has combines with its working. It's working town. It's really a beautiful thing.
And the thing is too is that like there's been a lot of great artists and producers. Lamb and Dave Bottrell's out of Dundas, and like even guys like Caribou kind of out of Dundas, and there's a lot. Mark Howard, like there's so many really, really great music people that have kind of come out of the area, and I feel like that working class kind of ethos or the values are in them, where there's like sort of a no nonsense, you got to do it for the right reasons kind of thing. And we got to keep in mind too that like it's kind of like there's a big kind of biker gangster kind of like tone to the city as well.
Yeah.
And then on top of that it's a fucking weirdo city.
Yeah.
Like we did the whole like hilarious House of Frightenstein is out of here. Yeah. And there were guys like the Church of the Universe guys. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but Church of the Universe was like a big organization. My uncle was involved with it, but they were trying to like legalize marijuana.
Yeah.
And, they were kind of like, those Hell's Angels that hung out with Hunter S. Thompson.
Yeah.
That was the vibe. Like lots of, naked parties and stuff like that. Kind of like hippie meets biker.
Yeah.
And that sort of weird, badass psychedelic kind of thing has been a part of the city's like kind of vibe for a very, very long time. Being just on the outside of Toronto, it kind of lent itself to people that wanted to be involved but didn't necessarily want to be all about the business of it.
Yeah.
And I think it's been that way for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. But yeah, man, Hamilton is like rad, weirdo little city.
Yeah. So how would it? I'm always interested to hear people's comparisons between maybe Toronto and Hamilton as somebody that's, fairly new to this area. So like you say, is that a good way how you'd put it? Is it like Hamilton's the less business kind of?
I mean, I think historically, I don't think it is necessarily right now.
Yeah.
But I think historically, like it's kind of been that way, where it was like maybe Toronto was upper management and
Yeah,
Hamilton
I got you. Yeah,
was the union.
Yeah.
Like I think that it's always kind of had that
tone to it. Yeah,
that tone to it.
Yeah. And how do you feel? And how do you feel the city is? Again, back to I guess Lee's comment of economically and stuff, but even like the music scene, creative scene. How do you feel that it's fitting compared to how it has been? Or do you think it's going in a good direction? Do you think it's stagnant?
I think like at the end of the day, I think the kids will be all right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I really do believe that, and I do see things with some of the people I work with. And I see that with like, Trevor from my studios.
There's people doing really great things around, right?
They absolutely are. And but I feel like I mean, with visual artists, there's so many great visual artists coming out. If you're the Burnt Toast guy, like, I mean, he's massive. Like, Pharrell Williams is the marketing director of his thing, and I forget what the artist's name is, but LeBron James bought one of them. So like Hamilton, like in terms of like people, creative output, those are two of, without a doubt, the biggest visual artists that Canada as a whole has ever produced. The money they've generated probably makes the group of 7 collectively look like nothing. And, that's happening right now. In terms of music and whatnot, I think that maybe we're going to see some of the same success stories where these are people from Hamilton, but they're using unconventional ways or more modern ways in order to get their music out there, which I think will probably be a response to the fact that, there's no fucking clubs right now.
Yeah.
We can talk about that. Like, so the music scene as we knew it or understood it, very, very, very different. Over COVID, we watched Homegrown, Baltimore House, Absinthe. Now we got Doors on the way out. We got Casbah on the way out. We got The Saint on the way out. Like, that is devastating.
Yeah.
Haven was another one. Like there was,
And do you think it's a change in like in the culture of the place? Is it the big kids from Toronto moving in and putting condos up and kind of changing the culture of the place, or is it what's do you think's leading to this?
Well, yes, but I don't blame them.
Yeah.
And not entirely. You know what I mean? Like I think, okay, well, here's what I think about Toronto people moving here. Toronto people can't afford Toronto. Nobody can.
Yeah.
So they moved to Hamilton. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't hold it against anybody for wanting to raise a family in a house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there is statistically a problem with that, whereas Hamilton people make 30 to 40% less than what Toronto people make.
100%.
So as a satellite city for Toronto, that's great. And so for people that work outside of the city, then yes, it doesn't really change things.
Yeah.
For people that work in Hamilton, they're now struggling. So that's just an economic fact.
Yeah.
Like that's, in terms of places shutting down and all that, I mean, yeah. With that said, I'm not seeing anybody turning any of these places into heritage sites. I'm not seeing anybody buying up. Actually, I would say that my landlord has done that. They've been very, very reasonable with rent. And my landlord for my for my studio.
Yeah.
They own several buildings, Kalina and Marco. They own like the Spice Factory. They own my building, Center 3 on James.
Yeah.
They are salt of the earth, amazing, the philanthropists. That's what they are, in the traditional respect. And they're the ones that are protecting artists from crushing real estate.
Corporate real estate.
And they're doing it with, like John Smith, who's an amazing visual artist, Hutch and the Ronson. They're downstairs and, so they're running their studio out of it. And, they've literally protected me from losing my studio, which I would have otherwise.
That's such an interesting, and again, talking.
But I'm not. I wish. I just want to finish. I just wish there was more people doing that. Like I really wish that there was somebody who was like buying up a building and just being like, you know what, like we're just going to keep this. Like I would love to see somebody with a bank account that was big enough to be like, you know what, I don't need to make more money. But for the sake of the city and culture, I'd love to keep this club operating at a more affordable, sort of thing.
Yeah, because it's not the most like, even talking about music scenes, that's not the most rock and roll conversation to talk about the whole business side. And like you say, even something as, a lot of time people don't understand the overheads that go into, making these venues pay and stuff, and, making it viable for a lot of people. But yeah, I think it's a really, exactly what you said about, your landlords. It all ties into the ability for people to be able to create this culture in a place like Hamilton, right? And it's the minute again, I'm fairly new to town, but it's I just wonder how the city's going to change in that sense of like, music is the what do you think really is it a thing that where artists need to come together, or music creators
I've always wondered why like collectively more artists haven't gone in on a building. Like I think that there's a lot of people that could go into some kind of trust or whatever in order to make it happen. So I wonder that. I'd love to see people organizing it. That would kind of, I'd feel pretty inspired by that. I'm not exactly sure, man.
Yeah.
Like I think it's gonna unfold as it does. Like I always have my reservations about a lot of the things that are going on currently with music, because I value so much the growth that comes from playing shitholes and being around your peers in a practice space. Like the basement of Sonic Onion was a great spot where people, like I was kind of younger than, I didn't go there a lot, but like I've been in other situations like it, but it's just, anyway, my whole point is like a shithole basement that's got like 5 practice spaces in it has an ecosystem of people that are challenging each other. There's a sense of identity and cool that comes of it in a very organic way that I think is very hard to develop in a way that involves instructors, that involves money. Because at the end of the day, I think artists as a whole need to, and I don't want to get, I would love to keep the conversation cool rock and roll, but I'm going to get a little, I think the idea of what's called free play.
Yeah.
Where you're exploring things and you're messing around, like, you can call it fucking around or whatever you want to call it. But that idea of working with materials or sounds or ideas or your instrument or a paintbrush and whatever, canvas, whatever it is, but doing it where you're not thinking about the end goal.
Creating for the sake of creating.
Creating for the sake of creating. Yeah. And I think that kind of thing is really important. And I see the music scene here now changing, and the venues are definitely one thing, but I don't necessarily love the fact that you can't get 3 bands can't get a practice space for like $400.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I would love to be seeing that, because I think that's incredibly important. And so many people are struggling with homes to have the kid just like renting out, or like, in the garage or the basement. It's like, it's probably been rent out into a rental. So there's just like, there's some of the things like that are challenging, but, I think history would tell me that, necessity is the mother of invention, and the kids are going to find their own way, and it'll probably be online.
Yeah.
Or it'll manifest itself in other ways. But like, if, where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah, totally.
I'm not like overly concerned about it, but I think that old man me is. The one that's like, but if they don't do it this way, how will this happen? And if they don't do it this way, then this is going to change, and then it won't be what it was, so it'll suck.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe it will suck, but maybe it turns into something better, and maybe it's time for that to die.
Yeah, there's a new groove to be cut, sort of thing, by the kids, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'd like to have, like, I don't really have like strong feelings about it. Or maybe I've just kind of come to that next level, which is the acceptance of it all.
Yeah.
But right now I'm just kind of like, it's going to be whatever it is. And I'm sure, people have been doing cool stuff for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
I'm sure they're going to figure out a way.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting time all around, I think, for sure, So Yeah. So, so we were talking about the Wild High earlier.
Yeah,
great record,
great guys.
Great job by all of you. I love the tune. It sounds great. And so, what's going off? What's coming up for you and Threshold? I know you mentioned your solo project and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's the latest projects been like? I know you've just been out somewhere.
Yeah, I was
Canada.
with a band called The Hour Hand out of just outside of Regina.
Mm-hmm. It looks so cool in like a cottage wood surrounding and all that, right?
I mean, cottages are kind of my favorite place to work.
Can
like
imagine.
I've done it a handful of times. Northern Ontario and Quebec, I've done it. And this one was a little bit different because I was, hopping on a plane to get out there. And basically I just filled up my bags literally with as much gear as I possibly could, wrapped in as much foam.
Yeah.
You know,
hate to forget something all the way.
Oh,
out there,
you have
right?
I was anxious. At one point, I was so stressed because I thought I had left my eye lock.
Oh no! Yeah.
And I was like, did I take it out?
Yeah.
Did I double check and take it out? Like, where the fuck is my eye lock? And I just lost it, and I had to take everything apart to finally find it where I left it.
Yeah. An eye lock is essential for music creating. If nobody knows what an eye lock is.
it allows us to run the software. It's the licenses.
Yeah.
Are stored on there. I didn't know if the internet would be right, and I didn't know if I got out there, if I didn't have the eye lock, would I be able to transfer it? And so I went nuts. So that was definitely a big concern. But thankfully, everything worked out great. So that was just a situation where, we kind of crunched the numbers, and they had a beautiful A-frame cottage on a lake just outside of Regina.
Beautiful.
Surrounded by, they're mountains. Like, this is a mountain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're mountains in the prairies.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
This is not the Alberta Rockies. These are, but picturesque, beautiful nonetheless. And being out there was stunning. And
great space to work. And
it was really nice. Like I love working with those guys, and they're incredibly talented, and they take it really seriously. My favorite musicians to work with are the ones that are very prepared, but at the same time, they leave their ego at the door, and they're willing to adapt.
Open to whatever comes, right? Yeah.
And they roll with it, and they really try to serve the moment in the song. And those are the types of guys that they are. So we basically, I brought a bunch of gear. I kind of brought half my studio, and then they had some gear, and they borrowed some gear from some peers and friends. And we kind of pulled a studio together in this, nothing, it wasn't a huge cottage, but this beautiful older cottage with an A-frame, and it's just so great to just be immersed in it, and
and just see, and I guess just go and see what comes out in it. I know there's preparation to an extent, but it's like, let's just do this and see what comes out, right?
There's a lot of trust.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I feel like when I think back on it, I don't think anybody questioned that we were on the right path and doing the right things, even though a lot of it was pretty unknown. We were there's just a trust like that. Everybody's professional. We're doing our jobs here. And then, if there were any problems, they were talked out within a minute or two. It really wasn't there were no big battles over something, and if something didn't work out, it was a very quick conversation. Can we try it this way? Can we try it this way? Yeah, of course. Why? I don't want to, but it was but I'm hearing this and this. And then even if somebody, I love situations where it's there's conflicting ideas, but each person is willing to take the time to understand the perspective of the other person. I don't necessarily care that people change, but an earnest attempt to try to learn why, because then I find that if somebody doesn't change their idea, I feel like that maybe they just kind of grow it the right way into something that's a little more refined in the right way. Because sometimes a criticism will just lend itself to not having to, throw the whole thing out, but maybe it's just a 5 or 10% change. But, you make several of those 5 or 10% changes, it can make things from okay to being really great.
100%.
And yeah, so we, the flight out there was like super reasonable. I think it was $300 round trip.
Nice.
And yeah, we just posted up, and it's just great to be, like waking up. I wake up really early. I wake up around 5:30 most days, and so I'm up, kind of like getting things going. The guys would roll out of bed like an hour or two later.
Yeah.
And then we just hammered everything out, hammered out the drums in the first day, and then the rest of it was just basically I set up stations to do the guitars, the bass, and the vocals, and the acoustic guitar and the organ. And so we were just kind of like cycling through things as they came, so that we, making the best use of time, but also making sure that, vocals don't get burnt out and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah. And it was awesome. And then flew back, and then I was like, okay, I think we did a good job.
Yeah.
And then, and then, a couple days later, I went into the studio, and I cause I'm working on headphones and some monitors I'm not all that familiar with.
Yeah.
And I did, like I did the speaker correction, room correction types of things to try to get it as good as it could be in an untreated room. But, and then I brought it up, and I was like, oh, fuck, it sounds killer.
No,
it just
great.
sounds really, really great. So great vibes, and yeah. So that's one thing that's been kind of going on. I'm in the middle of mixing that. Working with a couple other projects, Lazy Days, mixing some stuff for my friend Tom, who's got a client named Dan. Mixing that, my own stuff. And I'm gonna forget something that'll be awful.
Yeah. It's good though. It's good that you've got that much going off that you know.
Yeah. And there's a couple other things as well. Wild High just got finished, which is great. So that's at mastering.
Yeah.
That new song is awesome.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're really figuring it out. I mean, they're all seasoned. Like, speaking of like just guys that are pros, they're amazing.
Yeah.
And John's done it like 3 times over.
Yeah. It was a joy listening to them rehearse. Literally, it was the same song. It was the same song rehearsed for like an hour or two, but it was great. Really great. And great to see them like really honing in on every single part, and I think, it's what I try to tell everybody that comes here, man. The best thing you can do is practice before you go in, You know what you're doing is like, it makes our jobs 10 times easier, right?
Oh yeah, well, 100%. I mean, I think that's true too.
Yeah.
I think, especially with things like drums or whatever, it's like, if you can record it or videotape it, like, get it till it sounds like you want it to hear on a record.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, think about it that way. Don't think like, oh, that's pretty good, and then I'm assuming like XYZ is going to happen, and it'll just turn into something that's great. It's like, the more you take responsibility for trying to really get it to a point where you're like, and I'm talking more about playing than anything. It's like, making sure that if you're arpeggiating a guitar, it's like, is it even?
Yeah.
Is your timing actually even?
Yeah.
When you listen to
the little details,
those little, you listen to somebody on a record and they're playing steady, like super steady, they probably weren't just hoping to get it right that day. They had probably worked incredibly hard to be able to deliver it repeatedly, because that was probably like necessary. So yeah, for younger musicians, I would definitely always suggest like be, don't be hard on yourself, but I feel that's just like we're talking about with the Forever Student sort of thing. It's like, you got to be kind of living this.
Yeah.
And there's no like, oh, well, I worked hard enough and why isn't it right? It's like that. And I don't understand that process of thinking anymore.
Me neither. You
just got to keep doing it.
You've got to seize and go after whatever you want, right? Which to be honest brings me onto probably next question, I guess, would be somebody who's been part of the music scene and studio owners stuff. So what's your advice to like younger people who are maybe wanting to get into, I don't know, audio engineering, artists, or
I spoke at Mohawk yesterday.
Oh, nice, great, yeah,
to that new generation, and I was asked that, and my advice was that, to chase it, but to really chase it. Like, if you feel like this is what you want to be doing, and it's, and I'm speaking from my own experience. There's other people that have gone down this path and experienced it in different ways, but I know that I had done a fair amount of things in my life trying to not be who I am right now. Let me put it that way. I went to university. It's not that I regret that at all, but when I went to university, it was, primarily motivated by my dad. I'm so glad I did it. But that wasn't where my heart and my passion was. I've learned a lot from it, and it was probably essential to me getting to where I am right now.
Yeah.
But it was like that, those skill sets are being used towards music. And I guess what I'm getting at is like, I know that I tried a bunch of other things and it never felt right. And then the second I would be in the studio, or the second that, like I remember walking into Catherine North when I was at McMaster. I walked into Catherine North, Wax Mannequin was performing a live recording, and Dan and Glenn, because Catherine back in the day used to have a lot of live shows.
Yeah. It's a big enough space, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's a church, right? And so that was kind of a big part of it. Like, it was very common. Duke Foster was there too. And that was very common. And so, yeah, anyway, Matt Waxy was doing a live performance, and I walked in there and I saw like there was no fucking internet, right?
Yeah.
So like seeing API gear.
Yeah. Yeah,
this is crazy.
Totally, yeah.
I saw some Neve preamps. I was like, I'd seen these in books.
Yeah. I've not thought about it like that, actually. Yeah, that's
you know what I mean? Like,
total generational thing there.
I saw U47, and I was like, holy shit! Like, it wasn't talked about because, like, even like you'd go to your music store, you'd read some like home recording books. And that would be the scope of your understanding of what recording really was, unless you had been in a real studio. And then when I went into Catherine North, I saw it. And just like the many other times that I had been involved in music, I walked in there and I was like, I'm at home. This is right. I don't know what the fuck this is.
Yeah.
But I know that I feel like an actor with everything else I do in life. But when I do this, I actually feel just like completely intuitively in the zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I mean, my advice is that if you got a bit of that, there might be a lot more of that.
Yeah.
And so if you're young, I think another mistake is the idea that, the musician path is this sort of romanticized idea of the bohemian, troubled, blah, 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 troubadour, Jack Kerouac kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. And I think that's changing in a lot of ways. But if you have that passion where you're just sort of picking up an instrument, or you're just, really wanting to shape sounds or capture things, and it's like, I mean, life is about work and sort of like, going through these challenges and growing. And I think that's a big thing, is that I think that if you have this, definitely like pursue it. And I think that the sooner that you learn to embrace the challenges that come with the growth necessary to be good at this job. Like I said, like, on the one hand, you're sort of looking around at what other people are doing. On the other hand, you're sort of shadow boxing yourself, just sort of being like, I want to get better this way.
Yeah.
What am I doing wrong? You got to be critical of yourself. If you're willing to do those types of things and just keep progressing, then that would be my advice, is to just love it.
Yeah. It's a total passion career, right?
Just go for it. Because it's like, it's not about the milestones.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to sound cheese like that.
Yeah. It's so true though. Yeah.
But it really is just, it's like, and I'll back it up with something where it's like, when you see interviews with guys that have, like, whether it's like a Steve Gadd or who are those guys from Toto that played on all those Quincy Jones records?
Name totally.
The guitar, he played on fucking everything. He played on Thriller.
Yeah.
But you hear these guys talk and they're like, oh yeah, we did this session and we did this session. You talk to like, Carol Kay. Yeah. You hear interviews with her when she's playing on like, these boots are made for walking, and then she's playing with the Beach Boys, and then she's playing with this. It's like, they are along for the ride.
Yeah.
They're doing their best to show up every day and to expose their souls and who they are as human beings and as musicians. And they put it all out there, and they do it day in and day out and day in and day out. And they're always in that state of just delivering this stuff. And they challenge themselves and they grow and they listen and they adapt. And when you hear them talk about what they did, they don't remember half of it, man.
Yeah.
Because they're just in that state.
I was going to say, so soaked up into the part of the life, right? And yeah, like you said, their way of life.
Their way of life, you know? Yeah. And I think embracing that way of life and just embracing the fact that you're just...
And riding out the storms as well a lot of the time, obviously, you know, it's...
Upset, because they all have those stories.
Yeah, totally.
You know, like, I mean, there's guys that, you know, had tons and then lost it. And then, you know, some accountant fucked them over and then they came back. Like, or they didn't. You know? But even Sly, like Sly Stone, like there was him. He was living on like fucking Skid Row in LA.
Yeah.
Now he got his royalty checks. Like, fuck me. It made some of the best music ever.
Yeah.
And, but you know, that's the spirit that's in him. And, you know, he made some of my favorite records. Like, I love Sly and the Family Stone.
Yeah.
So just rawness. It's like fucking badass, but it's positive.
Yeah.
It's like, it's cool to me.
Yeah. Straight from the soul.
It really is.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that would be my advice is like, I don't know, go get it.
Yeah.
Just fucking 100%. Go for it.
Great advice. Yeah. I can't argue at all with that. Yeah. You got to love it for sure.
Like you can, whatever, you can get this dog. There's 1,000 things. Like I'll say this. There's 1,000 things that you can like learn quite easily. Like I feel like recording schools are valuable potentially if you have enough money.
Yeah.
To do that and then to intern somewhere.
Yeah.
And I feel like the interning is more important. I feel like one of the things that's kind of lost in the internet thing is like I'll tell you this, is that everybody that's wanted to intern in my studio, if they said they had a degree, it was a strike against them.
Yeah, you know, you're not the first person to say that as well. Yeah, you're not the first person.
And so why? And it's because they think they know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and if you told me that you worked in a kitchen, I'll be like, cool.
Yeah.
Let's meet.
Yeah, totally.
Because you know how to work hard and, you know, like that's kind of it.
Yeah,
like you just know how to work hard and maybe you're a little more humble.
Yeah. I always see it's a bit like to me driving. It's like you pass your driving test. You say you can pass your test, but you don't learn how to drive until you're really on the road.
That's a great way to put it.
Day, right? You know?
Yeah, man. I think things that like I remember having a conversation with Bob Lanois about this once, and he was like, "It's like Mike." I'm like, "Yeah, Bob." He goes, "Mike, those recording schools, do they teach you how to hang?" And I was like, I don't think.
Yes, I was just talking about this today.
I don't think they teach you how to hang, Bob. I was like,
yeah.
It's like, so what good are they? And I was like, I don't know. Yeah. They teach you about compressors and stuff. He's like, anybody can learn that.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly. You know, I was just this is the and the last interview I just done. Yeah, that's exactly the same. It's all about being music is probably 30% of the job, and then you've got. I think being a people person, a hang person is totally the other, probably 60%, and then the other bit is being good at your job or whatever. You've got to know your shit, but exactly like you say, being a good hang and that people person to deal with any personality is the one, right?
Well, a good session to me is one where, like, everybody's working hard. There's no doubt about it, but it never feels like work because everybody's done their homework.
Yep.
And so ultimately it's just a hang. But musicians are savvy and we know how to read rooms and we know we are generally rather intuitive, empathetic people. And so there's like layers to the communications that are going on within a room. And I think being able to navigate that stuff and being able to like stay on point and do your job and be in the moment and be able to support maybe another artist or, you yourself know how to encourage. John is a great example of somebody that from Wild High, he's very good at encouraging the people that he works with to bring the best out of themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of stuff is important. But in terms of the schooling and stuff, like it's great. But I will say that when I got started, right after I closed Vibe Wrangler, I ended up spending a fair amount of time in New York. I was very lucky to have Joel Hamilton let me hang out in Studio G in Brooklyn several times over like some weeks. And I was lucky because I had friends that were at school there. My friend Jeff was, in particular, was at NYU. and let me crash on his couch. And so I was lucky to be able to go down there. And what I got out of that experience has nothing to do with what some incredible musicians thought about this compressor or that compressor.
Yeah.
I mean, I went down because Joel had done the Black Rock record, right? Which was like the Black Keys with like a whole bunch of rappers like RZA to Mos Def. And
yeah,
I thought it was one of the coolest things I'd seen. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, like, I'd like to go down there and mentor, like, or be mentored by you, or check it out, or hang, or whatever. I forget the word that I used.
Yeah. Just be a fly on the wall, right?
Just be a fly on the wall.
Yeah.
And he got back to me right away and he goes, give me a call tomorrow. And so I did, and we talked for an hour, and it's like, yeah, man, if you're willing to fly down here, I'm willing to have you in, you know. And he was very giving that way. And, you know, the biggest things I got out of that experience, without a doubt, were watching the way that, you know, some of the guys that were in the room are from like the Roots and TV on the Radio, one of the guys. And one of the sessions I sat in on a few, but the two bigger ones were, one was with Aaron Neville from the Neville Brothers. Mm-hmm. And another one was with an electronic artist named The Pretty Lights. Mm-hmm. It's a Grammy winner. A lot of guys don't know him up here, but if you're in the States, it's fucking massive. And you know, sort of just being able to like, and he plays, those guys all played in a band called Lettuce, like this sort of jam band out of Colorado. I think they are Colorado. Mm-hmm. Anyway, like, what are these guys thinking about? How are they interacting with each other? What do they think is important?
You can pick up a lot just by sitting in the room and being around that.
What do they care about?
Yeah.
You know, how are they treating each other? You know, what are they doing when it's time to play? What are they doing when it's not? Like what's the problem solving that's going on? What, you know, and I think, you know, when you get into it, you just see these people that, again, truly care about what they're doing. They care about the other people in the room, and they really just want to do the best job that they possibly can. And they're giving it their all. And it was like, when I walked out of there, I was like, man, I didn't see anything where I was like, this guy like engineered on some fucking crazy level.
Yeah.
I saw him kind of engineering with the same things that I had seen many other people do. Yeah. Maybe a bit better, but like nothing that I was like, I'd never seen anybody use EQ like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, but what I did see was just the sort of disposition, the character that was in the room. And I was like, oh, fuck, these guys are on another level when it comes to that. That I'm not familiar with. Yeah. Like, you guys have put your all into it, and you care about this so much.
Yeah.
And I think just sort of being able to soak up that and know what it looks like and know what it feels like, that was worth more to me than...
any engineering school, right? Yeah. It's just magic to see that in a studio when it's happening, right? Even if you know, it's even watching something like the Get Back documentary about the Beatles, just to see how that works and just letting it cook, right? You know, it's really fascinating. But because
there's sort of that, like, you know, fishing analogy. It's like a lot of people, like apparently like AC/DC are notorious for that, where they're just like, they smoke like a pack of cigarettes and then they do 2 takes.
Yeah, exactly.
And they stop, you know, and so like, you know, there's not a lot of technical stuff going on there. They're just making sure that everybody's kind of like, you know, on the level, and they're aligned together in whatever capacity. And
everybody's, the audio engineers worrying about the audio. They're worrying about making the music right. And, you know, the producers getting the most out of it all. So, yeah. Like, if everybody's good at their job and knows what they're doing, then nobody should feel like they're working. Yeah, exactly.
We're just doing it.
Yeah, it's great advice. It's great advice for sure. Yeah, well, Michael, thank you so much for coming down, man. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking. You know, I look at what's going off on Instagram at Threshold and everything all the time, and it's great just to get to, you know you a little bit more and chat about what's going off for sure.
It's my pleasure, man. I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
I'd love to have you over. You can check it out.
Yeah, great. I'd love to come down and check it out for sure. Yeah, and for anybody that is watching back home, what's your socials and everything for the studio? And
just Threshold Recording Studio on Instagram. And that's about it.
All that stuff. Be sure to check it out and give them a follow. Check out the great music that comes out of Threshold. And don't forget to subscribe to Tones with the Hammer if you've not done it already. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all that sort of stuff. So thanks for watching. We will see you on the next episode.